Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Sanz of the Associated Press. It is the final stretch, just under 2 weeks before the U.S. midterm elections. Joining us from Milwaukee, Wisconsin is Hilario De Leon. Cynthia Mraz is in Indianapolis, Indiana. And Giselle Mamana Diaz is in Miami. It's great to see all of you. I want to start by first getting a sense of this moment in time. It's been just over a year since we last saw each other. And since we last saw each other, so much has happened, both inside and outside the United States. From the U.S. withdrawal in Afghanistan, the war in Ukraine, the U.S. Supreme Court striking down Roe versus Wade, the ongoing threats to democracy. To each of you, the same question, beginning with you, Giselle. How do you best describe where we are as a country?
As a country, we're very at extreme ends. I don't see any cohesion. I see more of the same, and possibly a little bit worse than we were 2 years ago.
I agree with Giselle. And another thing is, as Latinos, with Roe versus Wade, I know a lot of the conversations that I've been a part of in the community with our older Latino community members have been, we left our countries where, abortion is illegal, but it still happens. And we don't want that to happen for our daughters, for our nieces, for our comadres, and so on. And we came, here for better healthcare as well. So those are some of the perspectives that I'd like to add.
I would agree that the state of our nation is in decay. Our view on the world stage, ever since the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the war in Ukraine and many other issues going on, countries, our allies, are probably looking at us as not as a very strong point that we used to be. And I think that with our economic situation in our country, rising crime and open border, issues within our education system, the country is at a very prominent point as to where are we going to go in the next 2 to 4 years, and what can we do to kind of curb a lot of these issues that have come up just very recently due to this administration.
Recent polling is showing us 2 potential tracks for what's driving voters these last months before the election. On the one hand, there is abortion, democracy, climate change. On the other, the economy, crime, and border security. You are all in very different parts of the country, diverse parts of the country. What are some of the conversations you're having where you are?
It's more of the, well, actually, it's a mixture of both. The abortion aspect, more because of the Christian Catholic slant. I believe that topic has become more of a religious issue, at least in my community, and then a little bit of the economy as well. A lot of people are complaining, a lot of people are suffering. While there have been steps in federal legislation to ease a little bit of those inflation hardships, they still feel that they can't make ends meet.
I think so. I'm in Indianapolis to be precise, and inflation has really impacted quality of life and affordability for apartments, for home ownership. And that's really a big topic of conversation, as well as women's rights. So the average age of Latinos in Indiana is 28. And for a lot of us, that are women, we're having these tough conversations with our families. And like Giselle said, oftentimes it is a religious, centered around religion, but a lot of us, especially young women in our families, are the ones having these conversations and educating our families on what this means for women's health. And then the last one is workforce and increasing wages for jobs. Again, linking back to quality of life as things are becoming harder for our folks to afford. And I think the mentality a lot in our community right now, it's focused on survival right? So a lot of these national topics and trends that we're hearing, when I'm in the community or having these conversations, they're worried about the now. They're worried about paying rent, making sure there's enough money for gas.
So I would say in Wisconsin, the top three issues that our state is facing and the people in the community, especially in the Milwaukee County area and the surrounding regions, is crime. Crime is a number one factor, followed by the economy and education. Right now, the Waukesha Christmas Parade Massacre trial is going on still. I think they're finishing up with debriefings with the jury, and they're going to come down to a final decision very soon. Crime is continuously pouring out of the city of Milwaukee into its surrounding areas. We call it the revolving door crime wave. Just in the city of Milwaukee alone, auto theft is up by 312%, according to yesterday's Milwaukee Police Department report. Fentanyl is pouring into the community. As a matter of fact, I printed off just a sheet, just the rainbow fentanyl that they found in Milwaukee. This is from Channel 12 News. So a lot of that is hitting us locally in this area. I'm in one of our field offices and I see it all the time out there. Education, people are upset with the sex education that is being pushed or being passed by school boards for inappropriate ages, kids that are in kindergarten or first grade and stuff like that. And the economy, just looking out the window, looking at the gas station across the street and talking with people out here, they are upset having to go and pay $3.50 per gallon for gas, and they can't get to work. They're struggling with trying to buy groceries. So those are some of the main issues hitting them, along with the pipeline, line 5 that we have up in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, trying to figure out whether our state's going to move forward on keeping that project or getting rid of it, which will affect about a couple thousand people in the northern area who use propane to heat their homes, especially during this upcoming winter.
So those are some of the conversations you're having where you are. For a time this summer, it seemed as if the Supreme Court's decision around Roe versus Wade was perhaps shifting momentum. We had heard about that red wave heading into November, that maybe Democrats could have more seats in Congress. There's been erosion over that over the past several weeks. And I'm wondering, when you look at that national landscape from where you are in South Florida, in Central Indiana, in Wisconsin, what do you think is going to drive people to the polls? Is there a single issue, or is it, as you point out, a combination of things that people really are worried about and want answers and solutions to?
I believe the drive to the polls is a lot of people that here in South Florida, but it's a very Trump Republican state. They want to revert back to the Trump days. And we're not talking about, and Biden said it, he said the Republican Party is not your father's party. So the people who are pushing for the Republicans again want to get back to that, I think, Trump era, that politics, and they just want to get rid of the current administration because they felt maybe economically they were doing better. There was definitely no inflation in the 4 years Trump was president. So in their minds, they think, okay, it was better. So it's kind of a revenge vote. A lot of people who are voting is a revenge vote. And I see a lot of Democrats very discouraged. The newspapers and the media here, they're already calling for a complete Republican win across the ticket. And it's very discouraging for those in the Democratic Party to go to the polls because they're calling it. So it's a revenge vote. And then you have the other side that they want to fight against the revenge vote, but they're discouraged as well. That's what I feel here in South Florida.
I think a big drive is education, because our Latino population is very, very young, and a lot of the folks who are voting and are older want to make sure that we set up our young Latinos for success in quality education. We have school board on our midterm, as well as pushing for improving wages and also women's reproductive rights, making sure that we keep our representatives and our senators who are supporting that in the state in office, and we replace the Republican ones.
I would say that out of the 3 or 4 main topics that I mentioned, those are very much driving factors. When it comes to revenge against the Biden administration, I think it's people, and this, not just Republicans, these are independents, these are soft Democrats, people that are just frustrated at the way and how far the administration has gone on many issues to the left, rather than, being to the center or moderate, or, sticking to some of the issues that the Trump administration pushed policy-wise, that, made sure that there was no inflation, ensuring that, we were going against crime, or, ensuring that drugs were taken off the streets, and, human trafficking was lowered. So I think there's a lot of factors that add into why people are turning out. Just recently, the Republican Party gained over 1 million people that registered to become Republicans because of their frustration with everything that's going on when they have to go to the grocery stores, where they have to take money out of their pocketbooks so that they can, buy gas. So people are getting hit on all flanks. And from conversations that I've had with people, and I've worked our state fair booth, I've done a lot of work just talking to thousands of people. And, regarding the abortion issue, not many people look at it as their main reason as to why they want to go out and vote this November.
We've talked a fair amount over the past number of years about misinformation, disinformation, the divisions that has caused, and just a general fracturing of democracy across the US. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, especially around elections and election results. The January 6th committee continuing its investigation over the insurrection in the Capitol. And there are election deniers running for office in several states. So same question for all of you. How much faith do you have in the election process today? And will you accept the results of the election?
I have a lot less. Actually, I mailed in my vote a couple of days ago, and I actually had doubts. I actually said maybe I should go in person to vote, because of the amount of doubt and questioning that was injected in the election process that before I never felt before. I actually had a sense of distrust of the US Postal Service, or who's gonna transfer my envelope to the ballot box. And I started, and my husband, who always did by mail by vote, vote by mail, he went in person. So we have great faith in our institutions, but because of all the noise around the election process, we're not as trustful as we used to be. So it really did influence the way people view the voting process, and that's very unfortunate.
I am someone who has faith, and the reason why is because I am someone who volunteers also to be a precinct volunteer. And last election here in Indiana for 2020, I also help count votes, right? So when I'm out and having conversations with folks and they say, well, I don't really trust the process, what I tell them is, hey, do you have some availability, right? To help and volunteer at our early voting sites, or help count votes the day of, or all of these other opportunities. Because if you're a part of it and you have those doubts and questions, hey, why also not, get some work done and see the process for yourself and believe in it. I will say there are candidates running in the state of Indiana who were known as election deniers and did not accept the results. And they have kind of had to take several steps back and come to terms and say, I never said that, because the positions that they are running for. And I think that paints a full picture for voters as well.
So in the Milwaukee County area, I am the second vice chair of the Milwaukee County Republican Party, and I work very closely with our Republican election commissioners for the city and the county. And one of the things that we actually do on election day is we go from polling location to polling location throughout the entire county. There's a lot of locations that we go to. We make sure that things are going on. We ensure that the poll observers are there. There's no issues, anything that they write down. I'm there to, just watch and observe and keep track of things. One of the things I do is, not every system is perfect, but what we can do is participate by being poll observers or poll workers, or, getting appointed to positions where we can work on elections, or, we just run better campaigns. And so at the end of the day, we have the freedom of speech. We should be able to say whatever we want. And, regarding the results, yes, we will accept them. And, when we win, we win. If we lose, we got to work harder next time.
So we've heard a number of things that are motivating voters. The name we hear a lot is the name of President Trump. How much of a factor is President Trump, do you think, in your circles and in your motivation to vote this year?
President Trump has lost his glimmer, and he has been eclipsed in Florida by Ron DeSantis. A lot of people are now voicing their support for Ron DeSantis and expect him to run for president and not even complete his governor term if he were to win governor this election. In fact, Charlie Crist, his opponent, asked him at point blank at the debate, will you tell your voters that you will serve a full term? So not so much Trump. Ron DeSantis is now carrying the Republican flag in Florida more than Trump.
So we are the home of Mike Pence. So I think, living through what we have lived with Pence and as a nation as well with Pence and Trump, in the circles that I'm at and in the conversations with Latinos, they always, talk about how Trump referred to immigrants and Mexicans as rapists and all of these things. And perhaps they're not Mexican, and they tell me, you know what, mija, I know I'm not Mexican, but I know that they were talking about me, and I never want to feel that again. So I think it is a motivator, but like I mentioned before, right, our folks are concerned about surviving and how it is affecting their employment and their money flow to be able to afford shelter and basic needs.
I would say that President Trump still has a strong hold across the nation, especially in the primaries when it comes to the Republican Party. But the people in the Wisconsin area are not voting because of him. They're voting because of the lack of leadership that our state has in our governor's office, and voting to hold on to one of the top United States senators that the country has, Senator Ron Johnson, who is also the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, which is a very important role, especially overseeing the border, which has been open for a while now, with millions of people pouring across from not just Mexico, all over the country, and massive amounts of drugs coming in. So I think that people are voting on those factors and not because of President Trump. Now, people might miss him in Wisconsin, but at the end of the day, that's not why they're voting.
So as we emerge from 2 difficult years plus of the pandemic, we're seeing high inflation. Everything seems to be more expensive. There's debate over whether there's a recession on the horizon. I'm wondering, when you look out and you see all the different things, the different concerns people have, what should Washington you think, really be focusing on prioritizing going into the next handful of years?
There could be a recession coming. You know, it's very cyclical. I know rent is a local issue, but on the federal level, I don't think the banking institutions, I think they were quite cautious after the 2008, the too big to fail era. I think the banks have semi-rectified themselves in the lending process. I do think the recession will be triggered by other areas, more so in healthcare costs. The prescription costs have only increased, and everything else is hard to afford. So combining everything together puts people in a difficult financial position, which ultimately affects their mortgage payments. But it's more not so much driven by the mortgage crisis. It's going to be a cumulative of everything else, including healthcare costs that haven't gone down. They've only gone up. And I think those small factors adding all up will lead people to a recession.
I would second that with healthcare costs, and I'd like to add also education, because, you know, education is an investment, and in Indiana, it can be affordable, but what about our education for our lower income families or folks who are undocumented? Right now, that means that if they go to obtain a post-secondary education, they have to pay out-of-state tuition. So I think that would be a way for our nation to benefit as a whole, specifically also the Latino population. And I'm going to go back to, in Indiana, Latinos are the only reason why our population is increasing. So this would also help us a lot and give back to the state and improve our workforce.
I would say that we are very much going into a recession. One thing that Congress, or the few things that Congress could do, well, one, if the Republicans take back the House and Senate, I probably believe that the administration will blame the Republicans for being in a recession. And then the things that Congress can focus on is, one, rising prices for gas or anything, you know, end the war on energy independence by reopening the Keystone XL pipeline, which was a major blow to people when on the first day Biden shut it down. The other thing, you know, this can go back to a state level too, because, you know, states play a factor into this. Wisconsin or Illinois, for example, their state budget is $46 billion. They have a population of 13.5 million people. Wisconsin's state budget is $44 billion, and we only have 5.8 million people living here. The fact that our state budget is so close to Illinois and the population is so different size-wise, things that the state can do is, you know, decrease spending by ensuring that, one, there's audits that are done, and a lot of these agencies, or, you know, shared revenue in our state that goes to our cities, making sure that money is properly, you know, funded, and that it's going to the areas that it's needed rather than just thrown across the board. So those are some factors that can lower prices overall, and some of the things that, you know, Congress can do. The other thing is, you know, we have to stop sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. We've sent enough to Ukraine, and now we have to look at home and help our people that are struggling here. If they're, you know, major homeless encampments in California and other places across the country, you know, let's help those people. Let's use that money to help those people get the help that they need and off the streets and help turn their life around.
I want to end with the major political parties and their outreach to Hispanic and Latino voters. We hear a lot about Democrats moving too far to the left, Republicans moving too far to the right, aligning too closely with President Trump. What's your message as a voter to both major parties, starting with you, Giselle, as we approach these final days of the U.S. midterm elections and the campaigns?
My main message to the voters at both ends is that to really ask themselves, what is the harm in asking or listening to the other side's point of view and having a conversation? I think everyone is on deaf ears or in their own echo chamber, and nobody wants to talk to each other. It's we're right, you're wrong. And this black and white mentality is not gonna help us to have the courage to motivate everyone to have a conversation without emotion, without becoming angry, if you can. And that's the way. It's what Abraham Lincoln had for his administration. He had the team of rivals. He had his opponents in his own administration because he welcomed listening to different points of view and the debate. Our country was founded on debate and listening to each other. But right now, as voters, we're not listening to each other, and that needs to change.
I have a message for voters and then a message for parties. So for parties, I don't think that there is one party that is doing enough to reach the Latino community. There are some of us who are involved in the Democratic Party and are Latino and are pushing for that, right? And I think that is also an investment in our community. I do think Latino voters do their own research, but oftentimes, especially for midterm elections, they have a hard time connecting the dots on why these elections matters. And when I have those conversations, I bring it back to local level, right? We care about education, even if we don't have kids, because we want our community to be good and for everyone to be a good citizen. And that starts with education. So we talk about those things. And I think at the end of the day, voting needs to become more accessible for all. That also means having material in Spanish, but making sure that folks are getting things in the mail and phone calls from their candidates, whether they are from the right or the left.
I would agree on the fact that, we as, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everything else in between, we need to be able to have a conversation. We need to be able to sit down and just talk about things, because most times than more, or just in general, people tend to find things that they agree on when they have those conversations. There's nothing Republican or Democrat about wanting to ensure that our streets are safe, our lights stay on, our garbage is cleaned up, and kids have the best education possible. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And I think that, conversations like this, or, having those debates, having, an educated population, I think Ben Carson said it best. Back in the day, you could go, find a mountain man. He said this at the prayer breakfast in 2013. You could find a mountain man on the side of the mountain, and you could ask him, just the basic political questions, like who's your representative, who's the president. And they knew all that stuff because they were educated. They had access to, newspapers. They had a lot of time on their hands to sit down and read what was going on. We have the Library of Alexandria at the tip of our fingers with our phone, with social media, with, news articles, et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason why that our population should be, not as informed. There's a lot of people that, they don't care about politics. They want nothing to do with it. They think it's boring, or they just hate it because of the constant fighting. So I think, going forward, more conversations like this, more debates are definitely needed. When it comes to the political parties, there's corruption at all on both sides, but there's people on both sides that want the best as well. I think they just need to sit down and, be locked in a room sometimes and not let out until they can actually come up with something that they agree with. So But, looking at what the Republican Party does when it comes to the Hispanic community, we are investing into field offices. I mean, this is our RNC Hispanic Community Center right here. So by having this office, here in the heart of the, South Side, where the Hispanic population is very large in Milwaukee. We're out here every day talking to business owners, talking to the average Joes that are waiting for the bus stop. I was just walking with our governor candidate, Tim Michaels, up and down the street, going into businesses and talking to people that were mowing their lawns or just sitting on their porch. So I think that, the Republican Party has taken a more active role than it used to in the past, which is very exciting to see. That's why I think more Hispanics are switching over, because they are actually, hearing the message that Republicans are putting out. And, I think we just want to bring, a majority of us want to bring things back to, the middle, rather than having it go so far to either end of the political spectrum. But that's my thoughts.
Giselle, Cynthia, Ilario, thank you all for the conversation. You can find full coverage of the U.S. midterm elections on apnews.com. For all of us at the Associated Press, I'm Alex Sanz. Thanks for watching.